anyone who's been in crypto for a larva state before you knew it, all of a sudden, yeah, like, right, it's going to be Odyssey.
Oh, they're going to get rid of library.tv?
Yeah, it's going to be Odyssey, and then it's going to, of course, still be the Decentralized. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a certain gulf between like the ideal end user experience and then like all the blockchain first stuff. And so it's like, okay, well, in order to get mass adoption, we have to do a kind of a Coinbase type deal. Applies a whole lot of things. But then, so hey everyone, I have the fantastic going. Practicals there, looking sharp. So, especially with those cool bricks in those background. Are those vintage?
Yeah, it's a vintage tapestry.
Yeah.
But yeah. And these are
Do you get headaches from that stuff?
As I've gotten older, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it comes with the age. So, and take it 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Interesting. Like that's.
Yeah, the most I've done on my own is 3 between.
Yeah, floor is open, right? Like right now with the crypto world, with the decentralized content creation world, anyone, yeah, output YouTube for example, which is the library-based free speech centered blockchain to join there. And then I also have the live crypto super chat thanks to Cointree, where if you go to cointr.ee/the desert links, as I'm sure you see on the screen right now. Of course, there will be an audio version later, and you guys won't know what I'm talking about, but that's okay. So, yeah, and please make sure I don't have those have happened in the past. And that's never fun. So I do screen those. But in the meantime, right before someone who watches my stuff, kind of the reason why, I mean, I'd hope so, right? Old system that people control, like the new systems, I could be making huge amounts of, money or whatever, and it wouldn't really matter like before. I want people to change their lives for the better. I want people to live free, and that's kind of why we're all here. Or if you,
I definitely concur. I love freedom.
If you're one of those,
everybody knows.
Well, thank you very much.
She's looking downward. I'm actually, yeah. So yeah. Just to do a little promo to get some people in.
Doing our best before Twitter starts censoring us. And this is a random library Odysee.
I've been a big, because I've gotten to know the people at library. I really have I'm not going to get censored on, and I live streaming. I can't wait till I can have that available on my channel.
Yeah, it'll be hopefully soon for everyone. And I'm pretty sure it was rolled out right now, and no hate. The Odysee guys are doing a fantastic job, and like all those weird stuff, I'm more than happy to deal with them so we can advance this forward. So yeah, that's fantastic. And anyway, BitChute, Twitter is now blocking all
bet movements are going over to that platform particularly. So I mean, you're seeing a lot of, it's not a decentralized content sharing platform at all. Mm-hmm. So for people to even think that it is, I try to set the record straight. Only.
Yeah, and I believe there is a semi-decentralized aspect to it from what I've heard. Again, I haven't done a deep dive in terms of that there is the files are stored somewhere in a semi-censored content is stored in a decentralized way. The actual like all the metadata and stuff is stored in a decentralized way. Like a nuclear bomb, it's gone. You can still like boot up the old library client and you have everything. You didn't lose your life's work, but like your channel's gone and like,
form of art. So it's just very insult their channel and their videos. It's just also promote hard drives and backing up your stuff too.
Yes. Unofficial salesperson for hard drives. So Deutsche Bank now says that Bitcoin is too important to ignore with a market cap over 1 trillion and like a distant kind of like first they fight you, whatever, first they ignore you. And now when the banks are saying it's too big to ignore. Like, yeah. First off, how trippy is that?
I mean, like it's getting that with the supply and demand and all the companies going up and buying up like basically more than the daily. Really interesting about this article in particular is that it's Deutsche Bank. Mm-hmm. If people aren't familiar with Deutsche Bank and what Deutsche Bank reporter as far as banks are concerned. But they keep it propped up because of the fact that it's one of these too big to fail and failing.
Mm-hmm.
And your own bank, get away from the bank. And the libertarians coming in, it had that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have like the people, Ethereum and all these different organizations that are working with these Ants 1.0 to keep them relevant. When we should be trying to do everything we can to get away from them. But I mean, like, why do we need to keep going? Is it doesn't need that third party, that intermediary, that middle person to profit off of something. So it's in how what's going on with Coinbase. It's a lot different than 5 years ago, 3 years ago. I mean, 3 years ago, some of the best news we've ever gotten, but it's not fluctuating the markets like it used to either. So and when those markets are closed, keep constantly hitting all-time highs. So it's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a bittersweet thing. You liking the kind of like expansion to the mainstream, but there's always that little, like, I was sort of sparring on Twitter with some maximalists everyone's going to use, and no one will use fiat anymore, and I'm like, yeah, great, so what do you use your Bitcoin for? And it's just like, well, sometimes I buy some things, but like usually I just hold on to it and stuff. And
right.
It's like basically usually I just let my bank do all the talking for me.
And you see the value in unbanked bank account now.
No, because I mean, we'll see. The thing is, it just
I had to ask.
The entire thing is permanent. Live the way I do, and so it really helps, and then there's a lot of people that just say like, oh yeah, I'm buying some and I got my little, for my life it's been a lot easier. Like every year that passes makes it like less of a jury rig kind of to do stuff. There's like more ways of, so for me it's like a net overall good. And at some point I have to sort of remind myself that this is not ever going to be the perfect global financial revolution we fantasized about. That at some point, same old players that were in the banking system, not all of them, obviously, but there will be a shuffling. A lot of those bad people will still do like KYC and all this stuff on their transact. They still will report it's not going to be perfect ever, but the point is it's going to be a lot easier because like I know people who lived unbanked, few of those people, and it's so hard. Each iteration, each little revolution that goes over, there's in like 2010 or something like that. And so it's like the mainstream, and we just have to like realize that there's going to be some of the same old bullshit of the old system that will have to come along for it.
I agree. But since we're talking about this, just quickly, I'd like to say, we obviously see here in the United States towards a cashless society, access and not going.
Just keep some of it just in case, right?
Have you ever seen these things called goldbacks?
Yes.
For the different bills, because each one has more gold. Each bill is like, this is 1,000. Whatever it is we agree upon. You're seeing and basically having like a KYC custodial gateway wallet so that they can identify you and you could be tagged. Going in that direction, I just don't think it's good to go all digital. And then if you look at the situations like with Texas, the power outage, could you imagine like if we were living in a crypto age and power went out?
No, that would be.
How would that work?
That's one of those things where like crypto is the audience might not know this, but when I was like a kid growing up on my parents' ranch, like a very small kid, we didn't have electricity. There was only oil lamps. And I remember when we, basically run a small electrical grid on the farm back in the early 90s, right? So like way back in the day. And so, for example, like good thing to have stuff like Starlink, for example, to have easy internet access in more places and stuff like that.
Let's look at more decentralized station. Jim Cantrell, who I just had on my show a couple of days ago, he was one of the co-founders of SpaceX and Nexus Space, and then use ground communications to create a mesh network tokenized as well. So I'd
Hmm.
send you some information, a lot more powerful than what Ethereum is talking about trying to do with the decentralized internet, because it's
Hmm.
literally because with Ethereum's model, I mean, you still have a kill switch for the internet.
Yeah.
With doing something like a Starlink for freedom, and I think that having something like that, especially when if you look at someone like Jim Cantrell's background, he's a libertarian.
Hmm.
He's very even though he's worked for the government and done work for NASA and worked in highly classified situations, he's so freedom minded.
Yeah, and that's a interesting philosophical thing to do when you realize when you embrace the concept of freedom and SAR. So woods and having chickens and stuff like that instead of Chrome, and I'm going to use Linux. I'm gonna do this, and I'm going to like buy from the local farmers market here in town rather than the. But it's like there's those two different. Both is probably a good approach, because if you start from the wilderness, kind of like where no one can stop, like no one can. I honestly think that like 50% of the population using decentralized tech, using like Linux, Brave, crypto, like that kind of stuff, pre-search, of course, things like that.
Thereof, though, too. I
Yeah,
mean,
of
I'm not
course.
sure if you've seen the communities and taking these micro communities and forming bigger communities and just networking and really doing things that are more self-sustainable and doing a lot into the whole sovereignty, self-governance. It's been a big topic on the show
Yeah.
for quite some time.
And that's the other thing I saw, like just me in the comments says no electricity affects payments in fiat as well, and you still have your phone, and that's absolutely true on crypto. Just say like, what good is it when the power goes out? And when the power goes out completely, you got bigger problems than trying.
No, I would definitely agree.
Morgan Stanley is looking, of course, a big Asian exchange, I believe Korean exchange that was, had some crazy some crazy trading volume on it back in the day. I remember, and
They were one of the first exchanges, I believe, too. After Mt. Gox.
yeah, and it's another case of the big the to acquire key crypto infrastructure, and it's like, yeah, at some point, I think owning a lot of stuff, and
You're seeing what normally takes place. Were required, bought, and I mean, you got to look at all the different things that I mean, as
mhm,
far as like what entities, the regulations and things that they have to go through. If you have a lot of time, and time is obviously
asset we have in the world is time. There's a definitely like an in crowd with crypto and sort of just about every pie imaginable, and funny to see that I tend to be a big fan of big projects that are outside of the conglomerate, cryptocurrency, for example, or for other things. The little engine that could just sort of doing its own thing, trying to free the world from censorship. And as far as I know, I don't see them like you know being kind of the cool kids at the table, which of course slows adoption to a certain extent. But and it's the same thing with Dash for the most part. I mean, kind of self-control, self-owned that now is starting to actually own staking companies. The decentralized network is instead of the other way around, and so it's cool to twins too much. But Tyler had a tweet where who here runs an email server, like their own email server and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, dude, it's like freedom's getting in the way of your bag, though. But I
yeah,
don't
but they're
trust them
definitely
either.
following all the regulatory stuff. They're trying to be a part of that club for sure. To work and what may be around and what may not be around, I would pay attention to what's being exchanged on Gemini.
Hmm.
The volumes. So it would have been profitable for them to have done it, but they some sense
Which is very
because
odd that Zcash is on there, because
I
Zcash,
thought the same thing because it's privacy.
yeah, and that,
But it's not anonymous. I think the Zcash you can turn off the privacy aspects on it if you have that option. It's
yeah,
not like Monero where you can't, and the only way that you can prove is to show somebody your transaction on through your wallets and such.
yeah, and it's pretty interesting to see like who the cool kids are and who they aren't, like who's blessed by the powers that be, the crypto powers that be side of things, which is very crypto black sheep, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, if you know what I mean. It just, you know, it's interesting to see like all these different humans are so dang tribal. Everyone's always in their little Yeah, and there's going to be a new wave of crypto regulation coming up, and I don't know. What's your hot take on that?
And things like that to make sure that nobody's getting away with something that they shouldn't get away with. Because I don't remember which country in Africa it was, but recently there was an African country that banned Bitcoin, and they're having a dire situation with their fiat money. Bitcoin bypassing the fiat system, and the African nation ended up having to say, we're going to rescind that and we're going to allow. So it's it's going to be real interesting, when you have all these different financial institutions getting involved in Bitcoin capital that they're putting into this, and then you have the regulatory side. They can't really like screw up those paying most of the taxes anyways.
Yeah, they're good with pay it some.
So yeah, so I mean, I think the regulation is just going to be more for just like trying to make chain analysis a lot easier. I'm not a fan of the Lightning Network, and I've explained to you
Hmm.
before. I feel like it's just a centralized way of controlling and identifying a decentralized currency,
Hmm.
anonymous. So the things that we can do to protect our privacy, I'm always going to be a strong, proponent of.
Yeah,
And the things that take away that privacy, I'm obviously going to be strongly in opposition of.
yeah, which is a great example of the self-hosted wallet rules you alluded to earlier about trying to put some extra onerous regulations on exchanges and people withdrawing to.
You couldn't send that straight to an exchange. You would have to use a gateway wallet that has a
Mm-hmm.
KYC identifier. So, centralized wallet that you have your possession of your keys to,
Mm-hmm.
they know it's your wallet.
Yeah.
So it's it's not it's as many things as we can do to have that privacy, and as much anonymity as possible. I don't like the idea of this surveillance state that we're going towards, and that's ultimately what I think the regulation is going to be about: surveillance and ways that they can.
With a very short period of public comment over the Christmas break, Christmas New Year's break, right? Which is very very shady stuff. And this was done by the Trump administration, right? And
Mhm.
then Square Crypto, or actually Square itself, like not even Square Crypto, but like Jack Dorsey's company Square, the payment processor, came out against it. Was like, this is terrible. This will and all. And after the administration change, they ended up sort of like quietly getting rid of this proposed rule change. Like they ended up just,
Well, it's just a Trump initiative, so they'll just
yeah.
rewrap it is all they'll do. But
Well,
it's
I
not
th-
the end of it.
I think it's very telling that, in my view, had a lot of impact on the last election and in favor of the current ruling party. And so I think that's a kind of communication from them saying, look, this regular, notice what Jack and Square Crypto and all those people are big into is Bitcoin, BTC, and Lightning Network specifically. Now, you can't live off of Bitcoin. You can't spend it just, the fees are so insane, transaction times, you
Right.
can't just do that. You need to do it through Lightning, which kind of turns into more hub and spoke type models over time. At least it would appear. Well, it's still too early to see. There still needs to be more people using it at all before we know how it turns out. But
Right.
think about this: like Square is the payment processor king, so big into Lightning and things like that. And apparently, I guess the way the proposed FinCEN regulations were phrased, it would have harmed their business. And so they say, no, 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 go back to the drawing board. Now, if you come out with new regulations, they got a thing where like you have like the Winklevi twins and the Jack Dorseys of the world and all them doing a lot of heavy lifting for crypto, moving it forward, and at the same time moving it to like a midway point between where we are as a financial system and where we'd like to be. And so,
But
yeah.
but it's also a little bit confusing as well when you have a former Fed chair now secretary of the U.S. the U.S. Treasury. So it's going to be interesting to see how this administration plays. And obviously, I don't think Janet Yellen is privy or a part of any of that either. So because she's not a fan of Bitcoin at
Yeah.
all.
Well, that's one of those ways where cronyism can be a good thing. Is when it sucks, but like it's good when you owe something to everyone. And that's how you get into power. and your administration, a lot of them probably see the writing on the wall of the death of the fiat system and have crypto. And a lot of them also can be. But
Yeah.
as I mentioned earlier, and you didn't, and of the way regulations can go in a bad direction, of Free Talk Live's host, Ian Freeman, and some of his colleagues were arrested earlier in the week. Obviously, it's hard to tell exactly, especially when the information source you have is the government, and we can't really trust them to tell the truth 100% of the time, right? And so it seems like they were not doing required KYC on customers and stuff like that. They were operating a peer-to-peer, more or less environment, and the government does not take kindly to that.
They said they were operating without, they were trying to do something outside of the system, and not follow regulation because, obviously, people involved in the Free State Project as well. The one thing I want to say is, as far as since I've been involved in Bitcoin early 2017, I've heard of a lot of people that have gotten arrested for the same charges, transmittal license, and also giving them money laundering charges as well.
Yeah.
I've not seen anybody successfully get out of that at all. And I've seen a lot of cases happen. Unfortunately, and it goes back to, if you want to operate in the United States, I'm not a fan of what I'm about to say,
but it's a necessity, right?
It's the truth. If you want to operate in the United States, you have to be compliant with all the regulatory requirements, or otherwise you're going to have a situation occur like what's happening now. So it sucks. It totally sucks.
Yeah.
But the United States is such a monster that I don't think logically that they would be able. I commend his actions, but it's like, you had to know. He had to know.
Yeah, I think he probably did.
When you play with fire, you're going to get burned.
Yeah, and
whether you like to play with it or not, it's the burning part's still going to hurt.
Yeah, and that's obviously there's a lot of speculation at this point, even though it's a person I knew personally. From what I've known about Ian being a trendsetter, but he's the guy who his radio show introduced Roger Ver to Bitcoin. If Roger had not gone on to kind of thrust Bitcoin forward through all these investments and startups and stuff like that, like, I don't know if I would have. Maybe I'd just be now finding out about crypto. Really.
Yeah, but the funny thing about that is Roger Ver is doing everything under all of the regulatory compliances when it comes to his investments.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, he decided to expatriate. And I'm not going to go into his personal situation. A lot of people know about the expatriation, but so he is a little bit of a risk. He has to follow those methods. So, I mean, because we know that he was an early, when a lot of people refer to him as Bitcoin Jesus, it's not because he was just preaching the gospel of Bitcoin. He took his money and he helped to get Ripple off the ground as well. So he's a big proponent of Dash. So, I mean, and with all the stuff going on with XRP,
probably not.
So somebody's doing, so it's like, if you're going to go on that route, unfortunately, you're going to have to play it the right way. Anybody who's not done it, and like, I commend them all, but it's still, there's consequences to actions. Bernard von Not cryptocurrencies. I think, they kind of, what Bernard did was very hand in hand in what Satoshi did. Except for Bernard was a person that could be attacked.
Yeah.
Put in jail. So, are you familiar with Bernard?
Yes.
Von Not? Okay.
Yes, I'm familiar with that case. It's and I think that other cryptocurrencies have had public founders because Satoshi is not public. Like, because now the cat's out of the bag. They're like, well, I'm just open sourcing his code and it's fine. It's like, because of that.
Charlie Lee's another good example too. Look what he's done to separate himself from Litecoin as a creator developer.
Yeah.
Because, had he not done things like that, there could have been issues where Litecoin could have been in a similar situation as Ripple is and XRP. So you got to look at what people have done with their actions. Now, in a way, Charlie still got to keep the majority of his Litecoins. He just transferred them over to a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see a lot of this stuff, especially because the old system was so like the old days of crypto was so radically different from the old finance, kind of like the after effects. Like, for example, how many people do you think there are that like now are trying to become like legit with their crypto? They're like, hey, I got all this crypto, I want to like report this stuff on my forms. How do I do
Well, it's
that?
like
Because I've
if you
had it
have
for years,
millions,
since before this
right?
was
If you
even a
have
thing.
taxes on your capital gains and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's that's because my girl gets on me about it all the time. Like, you need
Mm-hmm.
to sell your Bitcoin. I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Put it in
Exactly.
my bank account
Well, yeah. So that's it's gonna
just
be
so they can take it from me,
it's gonna be
or freeze
interesting
my account and say I owe the IRS money or whatever the situation might be. So it's just
with the glorious early days when people just sort of like did what they want because this stuff had no value. And then there's a lot of people that now it's like, oh, now it has value, and now I'm scared because I was just playing around with this stuff because it was nothing, and now it's like I got to figure it out. And I think that like minted thousands of NFTs and just like traded them all over the place, and it's like, yay, I got all I got all this like stuff from that, and then now people are going to go back on every one of these stuff and forensically find like, oh, who made a bunch of money from that? Oh, let's see. And then
yeah. Ow, man, shut up.
yes, shout out to you know who you are, right? But it's exactly one of those kind
He's
of
the CEO
situations.
of NFTs. That's about the only thing I'll say.
Yeah. So it's kind of been interesting to see this sort of turning over the system from like this stuff was no one could do anything with, and then now everyone. Well, on the subject of NFTs, why don't we just like pivot to that? So first off, what do you think of NFTs, just generally speaking?
I mean, I've been saying this a lot on my shows. I think they're one of the ideas in blockchain and cryptocurrency is going to bring about a lot of mainstream adoption and a lot of use cases.
Mm-hmm.
The use cases that NFTs can bring are just having a digital representation for something and not using necessarily a cryptocurrency in that aspect. You're using non-fungible tokens. I like the idea that NFTs can help to change you can have a resale set to go back, a portion of that sale to go back to the creator. So that way there's always going to be an inflow of money going back to the people that it needs to go back to versus just a bunch of scalpers profiting off of. I also like the idea, we're seeing a lot of stuff being talked about with artwork and gaming and things like that, but there's so many different other use cases that can be brought with NFTs that I think are going to be just a huge game changer.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think is very interesting. Like, I first saw NFTs, and I was like, hmm. Like, what? I was looking at them a little bit skeptical. Like, oh, this is actually going to be huge. But like right
One,
now, what was that?
sorry, I was gonna say one of the really cool things I saw early on was like a Digibyte has the Digi Assets, which are basically NFTs,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen people take Divi nodes
Mm-hmm.
and put them the representation of ownership in an NFT and take and split up a master node between people using NFTs.
Hmm.
So it's pretty wild the way that you can, and you can also have audio, you can have moving files. So I've seen it was one of the guys from Bad Crypto's son, Zach. I think it's Zach Combs. I think it's Joel's son has a podcast that's he puts on a wax NFT, so you can actually listen to the podcast on the NFT. So
Hmm.
that's a really cool idea. Songs, Kings of Leon put out NFTs for their album. So now the cool thing about that's a big game changer is like for someone who purchases music via a streaming service or something like that and buys a song for 99 cents. When you buy it, it's your song.
Yeah.
That's it. You can't do nothing with it. Let's just say I got tired of it and don't even want to own it no more. Or I can just delete it and that's it. But if it's in the form of an NFT, I can actually sell it. I like the idea of being able to take items off of the platforms and utilize them. That's another cool thing when it comes to gaming is imagine that you could take your in-game items from one game and use them in another game or just being able to get rid of them on a third party market that has nothing to do with the gaming system. Because like I'm not big in gaming, but I've heard of people doing things and building up characters, getting weapons or whatever, and then selling it.
Yeah.
But they just have to sell. I'm a big fan of like going in the digital direction. I'm just not a big fan of going 100% digital. I still think we need to keep a little bit analog in our.
I think that NFTs right now are like collectibles. They're kind of like NFT for NFT sake. And there's a lot of crap out there around with it until you find what actually sticks. And so, for example, I think a lot of the old school blockchain will do everything talk about like digital records keeping as far as property is going to be instead an NFT rather than have like the this and such block driver's license like in a 3D 3D thing spinning around, it's like one of those. And so,
Right.
Like a lot of they're too busy selling an NFT of a song about an NFT, which is what Elon's doing for like $1 million or whatever. But I think of to actually the car. And so you can mint like other access tokens, but like the NFT is like your ownership of the car is what lets you use it. And there might be
that would be cool though. So you give your daughter a token to be able to use the car.
but it caps out the velocity at a certain amount or whatever. It does a bunch
That's
of
pretty
it's
neat.
like
Yeah, I like that idea.
yeah. So I think there's going to be a whole lot of NFT.
NFTs would make more sense for the tokenization of a stock versus something like Raven Coin, where you can just create your own cryptocurrency that would represent the stock. The NFT, I think, serves a better purpose in that aspect.
Yeah, I think it could definitely work like that. And there's also an interesting thing where, like, as you mentioned, like the selling your entire game account, for example, is a real thing. I know a lot of people who have been,
World of Warcraft, I know a lot of people
Yes.
make decent money like harvesting gold and selling their accounts.
which is pretty funny because of like in the most one of like those like early education things on crypto, a friend of mine in gold on RuneScape, because RuneScape he would be able to mine, he would just have his character mine the gold, but he was like doing school, he was doing martial arts, he was doing a bunch of stuff, so he didn't have time for it. And if you had like a bot script running, then they'd ban your account. So he had a little mouse events bot that would literally move his mouse, go click, click, click. It is going to become, I think, as important as the physical world to a lot of people. Like right now, there's a lot of the real world has the upper hand, but there might be more of a 50-50. And so
No, I think a lot of people hate reality, man. So I think a lot more people would be more apt to have the virtual augmented reality world where they could sit at home and live the life they want to live and get in and eating through a straw because it's just too much physical.
I think there will be some
labor.
people. There will be some people. I think there will be a lot of people who have thriving real world lives and also have thriving digital lives. And when they make unlocks the item in a digital world, like so, for example, you buy a cup of coffee and it comes with an NFT. So you're drinking your coffee in the real world, but you got the digital coffee as well for your Sims character, or whatever else they're going to have in the day.
Your avatar.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fun here, but it comes with a Doge in the virtual world as well. Like the NFT associated with that is also grants that item in like the virtual world. So like there's only 10 Doge pillows they ever sell, and I got one of them. Now around, it's like that person has the pillow at home. It's like,
That's cool.
So that's
I mean, dude, there's so many like loyalty points. Bad Crypto were doing proof of listening because they were really big proponents of the NFT movement early on. So, like basically they would do a show and they would give away NFTs for proof of listening to the show. I mean, it made these digital frames and things where you could take your NFTs and you could put them in digital frames, almost like you can do with digital images with GIFs and with JPEGs and things like that.
Yes, which will be the next addition to the office here for sure, is going to be an NFT digital frame.
Offhand, if I remember, I'll send you the information.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that would be the industry expert on the subject. Now, let's hit I wouldn't say the dark side of NFTs, but let's hit the challenges. So an NFT, right, its own has no value unless you care who created it. And it just, what is it attached to is kind of like, so for example, an image. Now, A lot of times you have an NFT issued where the image it references is uploaded on a centralized, shut it down, and you have an empty NFT now. You have an NFT that references nothing. Or I believe there was some artist who deliberately did that to prove a point, and he changed the art into an image of a rug in a literal rug pull after the fact, like just to show like, yeah, you think you're buying this, but you're not actually FS, to where it's like a decentralized storage actually for that. But then what's the gateway to that? And is that going to change? And then what if it's, the way it works? I'm not a huge IPFS expert, but like what if someone stops host the one of the biggest, I guess, the who's not in the NFT game necessarily, but library would probably be the ultimate NFT factory or platform, because obviously they're already creating scarce digital things that people own. Just being able to transfer ownership of content is the one thing that they're missing, I think. But they already have the
that'd
blockchain.
be awesome if we could tokenize our channels, and I think
And even if
that would be really cool.
even if you never do anything on the channel, you just keep it, being like, I'm the guy who owns this piece of history. And
Now with library though, library is a code fork of Bitcoin.
yes.
So I'm not 100% sure how that would work out. It would be kind of like the color coins in a sense, but I don't know. It's interesting.
As far as the actual, obviously the actual blob files, as they're called, that are pieces of the content that are all shared across all the library nodes. Like, for example, it's kind of like it already has that blockchain plus storage all in one solution with a naming system, and has a higher claim amount, just gets the location in the search, right? Who gets the actual name, but doesn't actually get the files. So it's just kind of there's just like a couple things left. And that's the thing, is like NFTs, we're in like the ghetto stage of NFTs right now.
Very much. Yeah. I mean, when we start seeing some blockchains that are being utilized more universally, instead of it being kind of the wild, wild west, we can see they're being able to take artwork that's not yours and sell it. I think that's not necessarily cool. That's like copying somebody's concert shirt and selling a counterfeit version of it. So I think once we get to like some form of like being able to have like verified stuff, to where that even though there may be some other art coming out from Banksy, if it's not from stuff, and that's another cool thing that NFTs can do, is help to identify real actual items for authenticity.
And verify who they came from.
So like if a Gucci is really truly a Gucci, if a Rolex is really a Rolex, you can have an NFT attached to it, and you could be able to verify in those manners. I think that would be a really cool thing. Baseball cards, like comic books and baseball cards and things like that, they have a value, but it's only perceived value. So how Superman doesn't care about comic books, that's not going to be worth $1 million to them. So that's kind of in a way like how in like Topps producing NFTs, you can have a fake wannabe Garbage Pail Kids come out, but I know that the real Garbage Pail Kids stuff is on wax. So I just think once we have those identifications and those universal blockchains, because we're still not really, it's so new to the NFT stuff. Like Cardano hasn't even really issued them yet. There's going to be a lot of blockchains that are going to issue innovative as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. There's also one of those things that I think is going to be very important for the future of this whole ecosystem is decentralized digital identities. Because right now, you have like a wallet. There's a bunch of different ways of cracking that. But like right now, you have a wallet, and you can kind of verify ownership from the wallet. Now, multiple addresses, you have one address per account. And that means if someone sells you an NFT, they can see the other NFTs you have at that thing and maybe decide to rob your house and like steal all your stuff from it and stuff. There's always those weird privacy issues.
That's the problem with the CEO of NFTs. There's an application called Token.
So much shit talking about this mythical CEO figure. I love it.
Right. So I can just look at all the NFTs that these account owns. So I have, try to see if I can dollar amount on the bottom part. Is it clearing up?
It kind of, maybe take it a little bit further away. Let's see.
So the top one is my account. Trying to pull it back. I think that's worse. I think
Yeah,
that
it is what it is. It's
yeah.
oh yeah, I see
There you
that.
go.
Oh, hey CEO, better get your gats right now because someone's gonna bust down the door, rob your house any moment.
Yeah, so I mean, I know everything that he owns. I mean, that's where the pseudo anonymity comes out, because I would never have known that had. Oh, this is kind of cool. I'm looking through his NFTs, and there's a NFT that uses a Coco Pele in their logo, which I have a tattoo of.
Nice.
They're called Tribal, with a lot of the ideas that blockchain and cryptocurrency are going to bring, with this creative destruction and disruption of various industries that definitely need to be broken up.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's gonna be very fascinating to see how this space evolves. It's a great place to start. And then
Yeah.
now it's just like, okay, well, censorship resistant YouTube. It's gonna be censorship resistant everything, which is already beyond our wildest dreams. But then it's gonna be everything we didn't even dream of before, that no one did before. And as always, let's be very honest about that. And also, people were at one point saying everything's going to do a smart contract. Your toaster's going to do a smart contract. It's all going to do. And then we realized that all this awesome stuff has limitations, and it's all still in the rough, and there's scaling problems and other things. And he better. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just, you know,
No, think positively, man. We got to manifest a better future for ourselves and for humanity.
yeah, that's good. That seems like a great place to conclude on. It's shilling time, Mr. Rice. What are you going to
Check out my channel.
Yes.
I rebranded from Rice Crypto to Rice TVX. You could probably still find me under
What is
Rice
the
Crypto.
X? Is that because it's dirty?
No, well, extreme. There was multiple reasons, but there was already a Rice TV, and it's it thing. But so I didn't want to be confused, so I did the Rice TV X. Plus, I mean, just the whole X thing is just like getting away from the norm.
Yeah,
So
it's extreme. It's like
it's
TV,
extreme.
but it's extreme.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why abrasive sandpaper.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not for everybody, but now obviously I cover cryptocurrencies, but I mentioned the sovereignty stuff. So anybody who's interested in learning about the idea of freedom and the ability to take the jurisdictional power from the governments over me that they have,
Mm-hmm.
and reclaiming my sovereignty.
Yeah. So basically, it's the red pill, the rice pill.
Yeah, the ultimate rice red pill. Yeah, encompassing under the umbrella of freedom. I also have a Patreon channel where people can get early access to videos, and I post up exclusive content, and that's Rice TVX as well. And pretty much all my social media is Rice TVX. So I would just, if anything, I see element. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of pretty important people. So, I mean, you can see some really cool interviews with people like Charlie Lee, Charles Hodgkinson, Roger Veer, Fluffy Pony. Had a lot of really good conversations. I've had Andreas Antonopoulos, immunologist, Professor Dolores Cahill, who's speaking out against the pandemic issues that we got going on. I'm trying to be careful with what I'm saying, so I don't cause you any issues.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm trying to cover a lot of different ground, but the different, and when I cover cryptocurrency projects too, just shill for the sake of shilling.
Yes, that would be our friend the CEO maybe, but man, yeah, I did, and then he got too high and he forgot, and he was looking up Joel Venezuela instead of the Desert Lynx or whatever, and anyway, stuff happens.
He was looking for Venezuela,
Yeah, I mean,
Venezuela?
it must have been a good nug that he got into there. So I'm just saying. So anyway, all your stuff is on YouTube and Odysee/library, and what else? Just those two mostly?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I've got the audio podcast. It's hosted on Anchor.fm, and it's available on all the major podcasting platforms at Rice, my channel. So it's still Rice Crypto. So that's how you'll find me there. But I do post up extra content on Library and Odysee, and the reason I do that is to encourage people to check out those platforms.
Yeah.
So I definitely encourage people to check me out over there. I'm trying to grow my base as much as possible. I'm about to hit 2,500. Maybe I just hit it today, but 2,500 followers, which I feel is an accomplishment on Library.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty crazy. I mean, I believe Naomi
I think you're
brought.
doing better than me on library.
Yeah, that's because I didn't have a YouTube at all until like a few months later. And then
Yeah.
the only reason my YouTube channel ever passed 1,000 subscribers very recently is because that was the only thing I could share to do the live stream stuff. But now, like as soon as Odyssee's live stream becomes like publicly available and much more reliable, and as as soon as
Um, I'm going to be limiting what I'm putting out. I might put clips out and and get people to watch the full videos on other locations. So, and then if I'm going to be sitting here taking bong hits and drinking, I may not do the live streams on YouTube. I may just do them on Odysee, where I can have more of a unfiltered conversation and not worry about any issues because just like myself, unfortunately, and I'm not a big fan of that.
well, better on your terms than not on your terms, right? And as long as you have an outlet.
Yeah, but it sucks. I mean, it's self censorship. It's just that's almost worse than being told.
Well,
But I get it. I
yeah.
get it. So I appreciate you inviting me on your show.
Yeah,
Brother.
no problem. So everyone watching, like, comment, share, subscribe, all those things. But specifically, I got it.
On Odysee
Yes.
and library.
Yeah. And I will see you guys next week.